Yeah, ESPN 980. That's the way an unbelievable Sunday in the National Football League ended last night. What a performance in Washington by the home team, beating the Raiders 27-10, outgaining the Raiders by 344 total yards. We'll try to make some sense of that with Louis Riddick in our studio in a minute. The Cavaliers have emerged, according to our Adrian Wojnarowski, as the leading suitor for Dwayne Wade, bought out by the Bulls. Jalen is hoping he'll go to OKC, right?
He'll be in Cleveland. He don't want those Western Conference problems.
Oh, I still can't get past the point you can leave $8 million on the table. I'd love to be in that position.
Yeah, well, I mean, the guy's worth like $400.
Oh, I know. That's what I said. I'd love to be in that position.
Choices, baby.
And Bryce Harper could come off the DL and return to the Nationals lineup as soon as today. He's been off the field since August the 12th. SportsCenter brought to you by CFP.
Certified financial planner professional, certified to provide comprehensive financial planning that can address just about any facet of one's financial life, including retirement, estate planning, taxes, education, and more. You want more info? Go to letsmakeaplan.org to find a CFP professional for you.
All right, there have been many times over 18 years where I've thought 4 hours in the morning was a lot of time to fill, and then there are days like today where it's just not nearly enough to get in all the conversation we would like to. Jalen Rose continues with us here, and Louis Riddick has joined us in our studio as well as we try and balance the things happening on the field with all of the bigger picture events that are taking place. And just to finish up the conversation we're having a few minutes ago about teams visiting and not visiting the White House, just through the things that have happened since Trump became president, Clemson went. The Patriots went. Quite a few players, including Tom Brady, did not go.
Right.
North Carolina, the basketball champions, just announced this weekend that they are not going. They say it was a scheduling conflict, not because of the president.
They said the same thing happened in 2005 when they gave like 8 or 9 dates and they couldn't work it out, so they didn't go in 2005 either.
The Warriors, I think we are safe to say, were likely not going to go, but they were meeting to discuss it for whatever that's worth. Steph Curry gave an interview to ESPN in which he said he was disinclined to go. The president saw that and disinvited them. So that's that. Just so we basically have the facts as we have them, and then where it goes from here remains to be seen. Jalen has had some really interesting thoughts on this. Mike and I certainly have all morning long. Louis, I'll give you the floor on wherever you want to go. You're a lifelong football man. You played football all through your life growing up and have been in and around the sport forever. We saw a day yesterday unlike any that we've ever seen before. What thoughts went through your mind?
Yeah, Greeny, I think I've said this a couple different times, and Golic, I heard you talk about it this morning. I heard Booger talk about it, and this is the thing that continues to strike me, and I've said this numerous different times. Right now, the whole conversation is centered around the form of protest that players are choosing to engage in, that Colin Kaepernick started. And the conversation continually, day after day after day, continues to veer away what the initial issue was. And it makes me think this. Look, I think every player in the National Football League who's kneeling right now, they weren't doing this a year ago, 2 years ago. Players in the National Football League understand the privilege that it is to live in this country, to play the sport that they do, to be able to take care of their families, and what it means to be an American. They understand that. There's a bigger issue that's involved here, though, right now. And I think what's troubling to me is that I think people purposely want to keep the conversation about the method of protest instead of about what the protest is supposed to be representing. And I think that's for one of two reasons in my mind. It's either because you don't care, because you don't think it affects you, or there's some other agenda that you've got going on. Either you think it's okay what's going on, what these guys are protesting about. Because otherwise you would be able to take your mind and advance it forward and say, hey, look, I don't agree with how you're protesting. I have family members in the military who have fought for the freedoms that we all benefit from, okay, who have been out there for a long time. If you cared about what the issues are that these guys really want to talk about, and I mean all of us want to talk about, and all of us are subject to, when you're talking about racial inequality and social injustices, if you really cared about that, you would go ahead and advance the conversation forward past the anthem protest and say, let's get at the crux of what the issue is here in America. But this has been something that's been going on for so long, Greeny. It went on for my mother. It went on for my grandmother, my great-great-grandmother. It's going on for us right now, and it's going on and it's going to go on for the foreseeable future. You know why? Because people don't want to talk about it. Because I don't think people, I think there's some people who don't know what to do. I think there's some people who don't care, and I think there's some people who like the way it is. And they're fine with it. Because you know what? What's good for me is what's good for me. That's what the world is like right now. If it's good for me and it doesn't affect me and I'm making my money and my life is good and my kids are taken care of, fine. Whatever you're dealing with, hey, you deal with. You deal with. This is not about the anthem for these players. The players are not trying to be disrespectful. They want to be heard, and they want to represent people who, right now, if it wasn't for the fact that the players were protesting, they'd never be heard, and things would stay the way that they are. And they've been this, and we know this, but we won't focus on what the issue really is. We will continue to, people will try to attack football players. Look, we know we've been in locker rooms, man. There's people from all kinds of different socioeconomic backgrounds, different ethnicities, different religions. And when they get out on the football field, what they showed you yesterday was this. And obviously we've seen this from team to team. Not everybody agrees with how to protest here, but these guys are tremendously loyal to one another. They're brothers in arms, so to speak, on the football field. And they showed that yesterday that, hey, look, we may not all agree, but we find a way to somehow continue to have dialogue internally and trying to come to some kind of conclusion about how we should protest. But this is much bigger than that, and that's the thing that irritates me the most, is that we can't even get to the problems.
Well,
we can't get to the problems, and I don't think people want to get to the problems.
I agree with you. And I said on a much, much, much smaller level, it's when Deflategate stopped being about the deflated football. It's when, and a bigger issue, it's when the Zeke Elliott stopped being about domestic violence and the procedure. We lose sight of what's going on. Let me ask you guys this. What if, instead of the tweets we heard from the president over the weekend, we saw this tweet instead? What will we think? Peaceful protests are a hallmark of our democracy. Even if I don't always agree, I recognize the rights of people to express their views. Sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah, I know where you're going, and it's...
You know who tweeted that? Yeah. January 22nd of this year, Donald Trump.
Yeah, those were during the Women's March.
He tweeted that out. I mean, that encapsulates everything you want to hear. And then he goes to the SOB comments and the ridiculousness of this weekend.
I'd ask everyone this question. If all the players next week decided to stand up and not kneel during the national anthem and then basically just said, okay, now what? What would people do? What would people say? Would everybody just go on back to, business as usual, put their head down like ostriches and be like, okay, well, that's all good
What
would people do? Would everybody be happy then? Or would the conversation advance?
So there are going to be a lot of people that talk in the microphones today that probably don't give back to their community, probably aren't truly socially and politically conscious, and probably didn't vote. I personally didn't need Colin Kaepernick to take a knee. I personally didn't need for this situation to take place for me to understand how important this conversation that we're having right now. And the term protest keeps getting used a lot, but a lot of people don't make the distinction of what types of protests can be volatile versus peaceful. A direct action is a boycott or strike. The players aren't doing that. What they're doing is a passive protest. They're quietly taking a knee, and they're doing it when people are watching the most. And that just so happens to be at their place of business and or work, because if they did it in isolation, we wouldn't be talking about it. And also, for all of the owners, and I'm going to name them, Robert Kraft, Jerry Jones, Stan Kroenke, Dan Snyder, Shahid Khan, Woody Johnson, Bob McNair, and Ed Glazier, they have their teams looking at them sideways today, because the guy you supported now not only turned his back on you, but he slapped us all in the face and even called us SOBs while doing it. So now it puts everybody in an awkward spot. And to your point about what he tweeted, I affectionately call 45 our commander in tweets. Yeah. We don't need somebody that's leading the free country, sending out tweets at 3 in the morning and 4 in the morning, nicknaming and being divisive. We need leadership at a time when there's so many things happening in our country. And that's what's the more important thing, to your point, that isn't getting discussed.
Absolutely.
As well as the actions by Colin Kaepernick, who is somewhere right now, the leader of the scenario of taking the knee, without a job in the NFL because he did it. So there is a contradiction that's taking place, and if this doesn't happen, we don't have this conversation.
Leadership, huh? Leadership, credibility, competency, positive impact on others.
I got a question for both of you after this.
Yeah, we have to break your again, this is one of these days where 4 hours just isn't enough. Straight Talk brought to you By Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Tomorrow at this time, Paul Feinbaum with his reaction to some of the big college football games. But right now, a quick word from Boll & Branch. And let's not kid ourselves, you're not sleeping in. There's too much to do. You need to make your sleep count, everybody, and so you need Boll & Branch sheets.
You'll love the sheets. Try them for 30 nights. See for yourself. If you're not impressed, return them for a full refund. Go to bollandbranch.com. You're going to get $50 off your first set of sheets plus free shipping.